This is the EVP Podcast.
We hope you guys have been enjoying the new format we've been doing, because we're going to keep on doing it. Welcome back to the EVP Podcast, where the unexplained meets the undeniable. I'm your host, Ghosty.
And I'm Beaker. Today we're diving into one of the most ancient and enigmatic mysteries in human history. The story of the Anunnaki. Gods, aliens, or something else entirely.
We're talking ancient Sumeria, cuneiform tablets, lost knowledge, and theories that stretch all the way to the stars. These myths have fascinated scholars, conspiracy theorists, and ancient astronaut enthusiasts for centuries.
Strap in, folks. This episode might just blow your mind. We're going to explore ancient texts, archaeological discoveries, and modern interpretations to piece together the puzzle of the Anunnaki. Guess what? I still can't read.
It's okay. All right.
Or speak properly. Nothing has changed in that aspect.
Yeah.
Other than our new format. Here we go.
Here it is. All right. Let's dive into the core of today's mystery. The Anunnaki, a name that often sends chills down the spine of anyone intrigued by ancient myths. The Sumerians were one of the earliest civilizations, and they lived in what we now call Mesopotamia, a region that covered modern-day Iraq, parts of Syria, and Turkey. They were the first to develop written language, and their mythologies laid the groundwork for many of the religious ideas that would later spread across the ancient world.
Yes, the Sumerians weren't just inventing writing, they were inventing civilization. The very concept of kingship, cities, and laws as we understand them started with them. And embedded in this culture was a deep belief in powerful, otherworldly beings that controlled everything. These beings were the Anunnaki. These deities who were said to have shaped human history and the fate of the earth itself.
Now, in Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki are described as pantheon gods who are the offspring of An, the god of the sky, and Ki, the goddess of the earth. But even more intriguing is the belief that these gods didn't just exist in the heavens, they interacted with humanity, teaching, ruling, and at times punishing.
The name Anunnaki is often translated as those who came down from the heavens or the royal ones. This isn't just poetic language. The Sumerians depicted these beings as descending from the sky, suggesting that their influence came from another realm or even another world entirely.
That's right. The Anunnaki were said to have been involved in the very creation of human beings. In some texts, it's described that they crafted humans from clay, using their own blood and essence. There's an interesting twist. The reason they created humanity wasn't out of love or a desire to uplift us. It was to serve them.
Exactly. According to certain Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki needed workers. Some say they created humans to mine resources, particularly gold, which was supposedly needed to repair the atmosphere of their home planet. The idea became even more famous in the 20th century thanks to the work of Zacharias Sitchin, who suggested that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial beings who genetically engineered humans to mine for gold.
So now let's pause here for a moment. The idea that ancient gods were actually extraterrestrials isn't new. The concept has been floating around for decades, fueled by things like Sitchin's interpretation of ancient texts and the growing popularity of ancient astronaut theories. But even within Sumerian culture, the Anunnaki weren't seen just as distant, removed gods. They were deeply involved in human affairs.
They were believed to have shaped civilizations, taught humans how to farm, build cities, and even create systems of law and governance. And not all the Anunnaki were benevolent either. According to the myth of Enki, or Enlil, two of the principal gods in the Anunnaki pantheon, their differing attitudes towards humanity caused major conflicts. Enlil, for example, was said to have seen humanity as a nuisance, something to control and eventually destroy, while Enki was much more compassionate, seeking to protect humanity from the wrath of his brother.
That's where it gets interesting. Enki, the god of water and wisdom, is often portrayed as a more sympathetic figure. In some myths, it's even suggested that he was the one who saved humanity during the Great Flood, a tale that appears in multiple ancient cultures, including the Sumerian Epic of Gilgamesh, the Hebrew Bible's story of Noah, and many others around the world. It's almost as if the Anunnaki were making decisions about the fate of humankind from an elevated, almost godlike perspective.
There's this fascinating element where the Anunnaki were not just creators or destroyers, but also keepers of knowledge. They were credited with teaching humanity everything from agriculture and metallurgy to astrology and writing. In fact, the Sumerians used a system of writing called cuneiform, one of the first known writing systems, which they believed was given to them by these gods.
That brings us to a key aspect of the Anunnaki, the knowledge they bestowed on humanity. Many ancient civilizations, like the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and even the Aztecs, had deep understanding of astronomy, geometry, and mathematics. The Anunnaki, through their supposed teachings, may have been the source of this knowledge, which would have been beyond the capabilities of early humans. This has led some researchers to wonder, was this knowledge truly divine in nature, or was it imparted by beings from another world?
Okay, now that we've got the idea of divine kingship, the Anunnaki were said to have ruled directly over the people in Sumer. God, I'm great at this. Appointing kings who were considered to be the earthly representatives of the gods. These kings were believed to be semi-divine, holding power because they were chosen by the Anunnaki. The idea of divine right, where the rulers are seen as chosen by the gods, would later become a cornerstone of many civilizations.
But let's not forget the darker side of the Anunnaki's interaction with humanity. The Sumerian text suggested that while the gods provided knowledge, they also demanded absolute obedience. The Anunnaki were harsh rulers at times, punishing those who defied them with floods, famines, or plagues. Their decisions were final, and the people were often left at their own mercy. Or left at their mercy.
And then, of course, we can't ignore the Anunnaki flood myth. The Sumerians believed that Enlil, one of the principal Anunnaki gods, grew frustrated with humanity and decided to wipe them out with a great flood. But Enki, the god of wisdom, warned the hero
Zuzudra,
the Sumerian equivalent of Noah, instructing him to build a massive boat to survive the deluge. This myth has incredible similarities to later versions of the flood in the Bible and other ancient cultures, which some suggest points to a shared historical event.
There are theories, especially by those who subscribe to the ancient astronaut hypothesis, that these stories could be memories of past cataclysms, like a massive flood or perhaps even an extraterrestrial intervention, passed down through generations in the form of myths.
Now, the most intriguing thing about the Anunnaki is that they exist at the crossroads of myth, religion, and potentially history. Could these beings have been gods in the traditional sense, or were they beings from the stars interacting with humanity in ways we can't fully understand today?
That's the million-dollar question. Whether gods or extraterrestrials or something even more mysterious, the Anunnaki have left their mark on human history. The legends surrounding them have persisted for thousands of years, influencing everything from religious texts to modern conspiracy theories.
Now, we can't talk about the Anunnaki without mentioning Zachariah Stitchin. Zachariah? I like Zachariah.
Yeah, just throw some vowels around. You're good.
I mean, that's how it's spelled.
Yeah, maybe it is.
It's
spelled not.
It is.
It's
Zechariah.
It's
Zechariah. Zechariah.
Tomato.
Hey, dude, the Stitchin guy. All right.
Yeah, Stitchin.
Stitchin.
Is it a guy or
from here on, from henceforth, he will refer to as Stitchin.
It's not even Stitchin. It's Sitkin.
Sitchin.
Sitchin or Sitkin?
Hey, this dude.
Sitkin.
Okay, this dude. All right, Sitchin.
This is called ZS. Let's just call it ZS.
Mr. S. Like, wouldn't be the EVP podcast if we didn't mispronounce names.
Yeah.
Suck it, DVO. The man who arguably brought the ancient astronaut theory to the mainstream. His work, though controversial, changed the way we think about the Sumerians, their gods, and the Anunnaki.
Sitkin's journey began in the 1970s when he published his groundbreaking book, The 12th Planet. In this book, Sitkin presented a theory that the Anunnaki were not gods in the traditional sense, but rather extraterrestrial beings who came from a planet called Nibiru, which was part of our solar system.
Now, the main argument that Sitchin made was that Nibiru's orbit was highly elliptical, meaning it would come into the inner solar system only once every 3,600 years. He suggested that when Nibiru passed near Earth, the Anunnaki arrived, interacting with our ancestors and influencing the course of human history.
Now, Sitkin wasn't just writing about ancient myths. He went deep into the Sumerian texts, particularly the cuneiform tablets, to support his argument. He claimed that the ancient Sumerians encoded knowledge of Nibiru, the Anunnaki, and their extraterrestrial origins into their religious texts.
And here's where Sitchin's work gets controversial. He argued that the Sumerians weren't just telling mythological stories, they were documenting actual events, or rather, the arrival of these beings from Nibiru. He believed that the Anunnaki came to Earth to mine gold that they needed to repair their planet's atmosphere.
In Sitkin's view, the Anunnaki didn't come for peace or enlightenment. They were here for resources, and humanity was nothing more than a tool to help them get it. According to him, the Anunnaki created humans by genetically modifying ancient hominids to create a workforce that could mine gold for them. This, he argued, was the true origin of humankind.
Now, to break this down a little more, Sitchin believed that the Anunnaki's home planet, Nibiru, was struggling because its atmosphere was deteriorating. The Anunnaki needed gold to save their planet, came to Earth to harvest it, but because the work was too much for their own kind, they engineered humans to do it for them.
And this isn't just some loose interpretation. Sitkin based much of his theory on his translation of ancient Sumerian texts. He claimed that the Sumerians referred to the Anunnaki as coming down from the heavens, and that their role in the creation of humanity was explicitly described in these ancient writings.
One of Sitchin's most famous and controversial assertions was that the Anunnaki were the Anu, the chief god of the Sumerian pantheon. The Anunnaki were his descendants sent to Earth by him to mine gold for Nibiru. He pointed to the Sumerian king list, which was a record of Sumerian kings and their reigns, noting that the kingship was believed to have been given to humanity by the Anunnaki. Now, some of these kings are described as having reigned for thousands of years, and Sitchin speculated this could be a reflection of the Anunnaki's advanced technology and longer lifespan.
So another piece of evidence Sitkin pointed to was the ziggurat, the large stepped structures found in ancient Mesopotamia. According to Sitkin, these ziggurats weren't just religious temples, they were launch pads for spaceships. Yes, you heard that right. Sitkin suggested the Anunnaki used these towering structures to launch their spacecrafts to and from Nibiru.
Now, Sitchin wasn't just focusing on the ancient Sumerians. His theory extended to other ancient civilizations too. They claimed that the Babylonians, Egyptians, and even the Maya were all influenced by the Anunnaki. Now, according to him, the gods of these civilizations were essentially the same group of beings, just interpreted differently by the different cultures. So when we look at the Egyptian gods like Ra, Osiris, and Horus, or Mesopotamian gods like Quetzalcoatl, they were all part of the Anunnaki pantheon, or at least their legacy.
So it's important to note that Sitkin's ideas were far from universally accepted. In fact, mainstream scholars widely criticized his translations of ancient texts. Sitkin claimed that many of the translations we rely on today are inaccurate or incomplete, and that he had deciphered the Sumerian tablets in a way that revealed hidden truths about the Anunnaki. But critics argue that Sitkin's interpretations were a stretch at best.
Now, many historians and linguists dismissed his claims, saying that his translations of ancient Sumerian texts were either incorrect or highly speculative. For example, One of the key elements in his theory is the idea that the Anunnaki came from the planet called Nibiru, but most scholars don't find any reference to a planet like Nibiru in Sumerian mythology. Instead, they argue that he misinterpreted the ancient text.
Another major criticism revolves around Sitkin's claim about the 12th planet. The idea of Nibiru being the 12th planet in our solar system doesn't line up with modern astronomical observations. In fact, if Nibiru really existed, it would be in our solar system, and scientists would be able to detect its presence. There's no evidence to support this, and it's one of the main reasons Sitkin's theories have been met with skepticism.
Now, despite the pushback from the academic community, his ideas took on a life of their own. His work gained a huge following, and the idea of extraterrestrials influencing ancient civilizations became more mainstream. His books, including The 12th Planet, The Wars of Gods and Men, and The Lost Realms, have sold millions of copies and influenced countless others, including those in the ancient astronaut community.
One of the enduring aspects of Sitkin's influence is the way he framed humanity's origins. He suggested that the Anunnaki played an active, even controlling role in the development of our species. The idea that our ancestors may have been manipulated or even created by the extraterrestrial beings struck a chord with many people and raised more questions than it answered.
Now, in the years since his death in 2010, the ideas he popularized have continued to fuel the ancient astronaut theory, which argues that extraterrestrial beings have been influencing or interacting with Earth for millennia. While his specific claims about Nibiru and the Anunnaki may not scientifically be supported, his work undoubtedly sparked a larger conversation about the possibility of extraterrestrial contact in humanity's distant past.
So, while Sitkin's theories remain highly controversial and heavily criticized, they've left an indelible mark on our understanding of ancient cultures and the mysteries of the Anunnaki. For better or for worse, Sitkin's The 12th Planet and his subsequent work opened the floodgates for a new way of thinking about ancient history, one that connects extraterrestrial influence with the rise of human civilization.
His work continues to be a touchstone for ancient astronaut theorists, and his interpretation of the Anunnaki is central to this community. Whether he was a visionary or simply an eccentric scholar remains up for debate, but his theories have certainly helped shape modern ideas about the ancient world and our place in it. When we talk about the Anunnaki and their potential extraterrestrial origins, one of the most compelling aspects of the theory is the ancient texts themselves. Now, the Sumerians and later the Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and the Assyrians, they all left behind a treasure trove of clay tablets, inscriptions, and myths that seem to describe interactions with powerful, godlike beings.
That's right, Beaker. The idea that these gods weren't simply deities, but actually visitors from another world, comes from a close reading of these ancient documents. And much of the evidence comes from the Sumerian and Akkadian civilizations, who wrote extensively about their gods, kings, and cosmic events. The most famous of these texts are the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Enuma Elish, and various cuneiform tablets that provide insight into the relationships between humans and the Anunnaki.
Okay, so we're going to start with the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest and most important works in world literature. The ancient epic, dating back to around 2100 BCE, follows the legendary hero Gilgamesh, a king who embarked on a journey for immortality. But woven into this epic are references to the Anunnaki, who were believed to control fate and had immense power over the lives of humans.
In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Anunnaki are depicted as gods who sit in judgment of humanity. They are described as living in the heavens, far removed from human affairs, but still possessing the power to intervene. One of the most telling parts of the text is the flood story, which mirrors the later tale of Noah's Ark in the Bible. In this story, the Anunnaki decide to destroy humanity because they've become too noisy and disruptive, and only Utnapishtim, that's a Sumerian Noah, survives by building a great boat to weather the flood.
It wouldn't be the EV podcast if we didn't mispronounce people's names.
That's what we do here.
That's how we roll. Now, what's interesting here is how the Anunnaki are portrayed as direct influencers of human fate. This is not just a myth about gods controlling the weather. This is a story about beings with immense technological and cosmic power deciding the fate of humanity. If these Anunnaki were simply gods, that would be one thing. But their actions, according to the text, suggest a level of intervention that goes beyond traditional mythologies.
That's the key here. The Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, provides more evidence that the Anunnaki were not only gods, but also had a significant influence on the structure of the cosmos itself. In this text, the Anunnaki are described as beings who shaped the world, controlled the stars, and had the power to create and destroy civilizations. It's clear that the ancient Mesopotamians saw these beings as having far more authority than just mythic deities. They were cosmic architects.
In the Enuma Elish, the creation of the earth is depicted as a battle between the gods, where the Anunnaki fight against a monstrous entity. One interpretation suggests that this battle could be a symbolic representation of planetary formation, and that the Anunnaki's power wasn't just divine, but possibly astronomical, suggesting a deep knowledge of the heavens. This brings us to a key aspect of Sitchin's theories, the idea that these beings had an advanced understanding of astronomy and cosmology, far beyond what the Sumerians could have developed on their own at that time.
Exactly. One of the most famous elements Sitchin used in his theories was the Sumerian king list, a text that lists the reigns of kings in ancient Sumer, some of whom are said to have ruled for thousands of years, and according to the king list, the first rulers were appointed by the gods, the Anunnaki, and their reigns were far longer than those of ordinary humans. Some of these figures, like Alulim and Enmenluana, supposedly reigned for tens of thousands of years.
Now, this ties into Sitchin's theory that the Anunnaki had an extended lifespan or possibly different biology that allowed them to live for such long periods, which would have been unprecedented by human standards. In Sitchin's interpretation, these long reigns aren't just symbolic. They point to a technological superiority that allowed these beings to influence humanity across generations.
But the most intriguing thing about the king list is that it suggests the Anunnaki didn't just arrive and leave. They established a dynastic order on Earth. They appointed kings, and these kings were believed to be directly connected to the gods. This speaks to the notion that the Anunnaki weren't just remote figures living in the sky. They were intimately involved in human affairs, shaping human civilizations and its development.
Sitchin also pointed to the cylinder seals and cuneiform tablets as evidence of the Anunnaki's extraterrestrial nature. These seals, which were used for administrative purposes, often depicted gods who were shown to have advanced technology. For example, there are seals that show Anunnaki figures holding what appear to be technological devices such as helmets and weapons that resemble modern-day spacesuits or weapons.
That's one of the most controversial pieces of evidence in the ancient astronaut theory. Critics argue that these depictions are just symbolic representations of the gods' power and majesty. But for Sitchin and other proponents of the ancient astronaut theory, these images are evidence that the Anunnaki were not only gods, but beings with advanced technology. This idea fits perfectly with the ancient astronaut hypothesis, where the gods were actually extraterrestrials using technology to manipulate and control ancient civilizations.
Now, we can't forget that the Nippur tablets, another major piece of evidence. Nippur was an important religious center in Sumer, and the tablets found there describe the Anunnaki's involvement in creating and governing humanity. Some of these tablets also hint at astronomical knowledge that the Sumerians possessed, such as precise measurements of the planet and the zodiac. The level of knowledge is difficult to explain based on what we know about the capabilities of ancient cultures. Was it learned from the Anunnaki?
Indeed, the knowledge encoded in these texts could be the most solid argument for the Anunnaki's advanced nature. How else could ancient cultures have developed such accurate astronomical data without external help? And this is where the ancient astronaut theory gains traction. If these beings had knowledge of the heavens that predates modern science, it would make sense that they were not simply gods, but highly advanced extraterrestrial visitors.
Now let's talk about the Sumerian texts regarding the creation of humans. In various texts, the Anunnaki are described as having created humanity to serve them, specifically to mine gold. The Arthas epic is one of the most notable, as it tells the story of the creation of humans as a labor force. The gods, unable to work themselves, decided to create humans from clay and the blood of the Anunnaki god. The idea that humanity was created as a worker species is central to Sitchin's theory.
The Atrahasis epic is one of the best examples of how the Sumerians themselves seem to believe that their gods, who were described as both divine and superhuman, had used advanced techniques to create life. And this isn't the only text that describes the Anunnaki as creators. Many myths from Sumer, Akkad, and even later cultures like the Babylonians reflect the same theme. The gods created humanity for a specific purpose: work.
In the end, these ancient texts are a treasure trove of evidence to support the idea of the Anunnaki being more than just gods. They appear to be deeply connected to the creation of human civilization, possibly even shaping it to serve their needs. The texts, however, leave us with more questions than answers. What was the nature of the Anunnaki? Were they gods, extraterrestrials, or were they something else entirely?
And that's what makes this topic so fascinating. These ancient texts provide the foundation for some of the most intriguing theories about human origins, and they leave us with a sense of wonder and mystery. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, the Anunnaki continue to captivate our imaginations with the ancient wisdom encoded in their stories.
Now, so far, we've dug deep into the Sumerian and Mesopotamian text, where the Anunnaki are a major part of the mythological and historical framework. But what's even more fascinating is how similar figures, beings from the sky, gods, or even extraterrestrials, appear across different cultures from around the world. This suggests that the idea of advanced beings influencing humanity isn't limited to the Sumerians. The Anunnaki, or figures resembling them, can be found in global mythology.
That's right, Beaker. When we start looking beyond Mesopotamia, we see similar themes emerge in the mythologies of ancient Egypt, Mesoamerica, and even ancient India. These cultures have stories of powerful beings who came from the heavens, taught humanity, and often shaped civilization itself. It's almost as though the same idea is echoed across different regions, and it's worth exploring how these stories align with the Anunnaki narrative.
Well, let's start with ancient Egypt, a civilization that is often linked to the idea of the gods from the sky. The Egyptians had a pantheon of gods, many whom were said to have come down from the heavens. The most notable, perhaps, is Osiris, the god of the afterlife, resurrection, and regeneration. In Egyptian mythology, Osiris was killed by his brother Set, but was resurrected by his wife Isis. However, the part of the story that resonates with the Anunnaki theory is that the idea of the gods coming from the sky.
Exactly. Osiris was often depicted as a ruler who came from the heavens, and many scholars believe that the Egyptians had a strong belief in gods who were not just celestial, but also extraterrestrial in nature. Some ancient astronaut theorists suggest that the pyramid construction, which was an extraordinary feat of engineering, could have been influenced by advanced beings from the sky. The pyramids themselves align with specific stars in the constellation Orion, which was associated with Osiris, further connecting the celestial with the divine in Egyptian mythology.
Now, interestingly, Ra, the sun god, is another Egyptian deity whose origins tie to the sky. Ra was said to have traveled across the sky in the solar bark, which is a symbolic representation of a boat that would carry him across the sky every day.
It's Barquet.
Barquet? Sure, the boat thing. The idea of gods traveling across the sky could easily be interpreted as a mythic description of spacecraft, a theme that echoes Sitchin's interpretation of the Anunnaki. Ra's journey was a key element in the Egyptian mythology, illustrating the movements of celestial bodies and potentially hinting at advanced knowledge of the stars and planets.
Now let's jump across the globe to Mesoamerica, specifically the Maya and the Aztec civilizations. The Maya were deeply connected to astronomy and celestial movements, and they built their cities in alignment with the stars. One of the most notable figures in Maya mythology is Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, who was said to have come from the sky.
Now, Quetzalcoatl, like the Anunnaki, is described as being of immense knowledge and power who taught humanity the arts of agriculture, writing, and astronomy. The feathered serpent was not just a physical figure, but also an astronomical symbol tied to the planet Venus. Now, Quetzalcoatl's arrival from the heavens, his teachings, and his connection to celestial bodies make him a fascinating parallel to the Anunnaki.
Interestingly, the Aztecs also had a similar figure in Quetzalcoatl, but they referred to him as Tezcatlipoca, and later Huitzilopochtli. Oh my God.
I like it.
Gods who came from the heavens to guide and shape the destiny of humankind. Their involvement in the development of society, as well as the idea that they would one day return, mirrors the Sumerian belief that the Anunnaki might return to Earth. In fact, the Aztec calendar is one of the most famous records of the prophecy of the return of Quetzalcoatl, similar to the return of the Anunnaki predicted by some theorists.
And there's another significant element here. It's gold. In Mesoamerica mythologies, the gods' involvement in the creation of humanity was often tied to the idea of humans being made for a divine purpose, often to serve the gods. The Anunnaki, according to Sitchin, created humans to mine gold for them. In Mesoamerica myths, particularly in the Aztec and Maya traditions, gold was also of profound importance, symbolizing wealth, power, and divine favor. Could there have been a connection between the gold that the Anunnaki sought and the sacred nature of gold in these cultures?
Another fascinating example is in ancient India, where we see similar stories of gods descending from the heavens. The Vedic texts, particularly the Mahabharata and Ramayana, describe gods who travel in flying chariots, referred to as vimanas. These flying vehicles are often depicted as advanced forms of transportation capable of traveling through the air and even across space.
Now, the Vimanas are especially significant because the descriptions of these flying machines suggest that they were more than just metaphorical. These were said to be capable of amazing feats, like firing weapons that resembled modern-day missiles or laser weapons. In the Mahabharata, these are a famous description of a battle between gods in which venomous are used, which some interpret as a metaphor for advancing extraterrestrial technology.
One of the most intriguing aspects of the Vedic tradition is the description of the Devas, who are gods that came from the sky. Some scholars argue that the Devas are not just divine beings, but extraterrestrial visitors who interacted with humanity. These gods, like the Anunnaki, were said to have shared knowledge of technology, astrology, and warfare with the ancient civilizations.
What's especially compelling here is how consistent the themes are across the cultures. Whether we're talking about the Vedic Venomous, the Mayan Quetzalcoatl, the Egyptian Ra, or the Sumerian Anunnaki, the core idea is the same thing. Beings from the heaven or the stars came down to Earth, interacted with humanity, and often played a pivotal role in shaping our civilizations.
And don't forget about the Dogon people in West Africa, who have a fascinating myth about Sirius, the star system, according to Sirius, the star system. According to the Dogon, their ancestors were visited by beings called the Nomo, who came from Sirius and shared knowledge of the stars, the universe, and even detailed information about the nature of the solar system. The connection to the stars and advanced knowledge is another example of the global presence of this mythic archetype, beings from the heavens influencing humanity's development.
It's almost as if there's a universal archetype in human culture, one that transcends time, geography, and civilization, of powerful, advanced beings who descend from the sky, bring wisdom, and, in some cases, manipulate or guide the development of humanity. This pattern is so widespread that it's hard to ignore.
Exactly, Beaker. Whether these stories are a coincidence or something more, it seems like ancient cultures from around the world were all telling similar tales of divine or extraterrestrial visitors influencing humanity. The Anunnaki, in this light, are just one manifestation of a much larger global mythological tradition that stretches back thousands of years.
Now, as we move from the ancient text and myths into the modern era, the story of the Anunnaki takes on a new life. What started as an exploration of ancient civilizations has evolved into a full-blown alternative history narrative, where the Anunnaki are not just gods or mythic figures, but potentially the key to understanding extraterrestrial life and human origins. These modern interpretations are where the conspiracy theories really begin to take off.
Right, Beaker. Today, the Anunnaki are central to the ancient astronaut theory, which proposes that extraterrestrial beings visited Earth in ancient times, influencing human culture, technology, and even genetics. This theory suggests that the Anunnaki weren't just mythological figures, but were real beings who used advanced technology to shape humanity, and these ideas have spread far beyond the niche world of UFO. They've become a part of popular culture and modern conspiracy lore.
One of the most influential figures in the modern interpretation of the Anunnaki is Sitchin, whose books like The 12th Planet brought the idea of the Anunnaki as extraterrestrial beings into the mainstream. His theories propose the Anunnaki came to Earth from a mysterious planet called Nibiru. And he claims what he claims orbits the sun. We're just kind of rehashing old details at this point. But he also suggested the Anunnaki came to Earth in search of gold, which we've already covered.
So, his interpretation of the Sumerian texts, particularly his readings of the cuneiform tablets, was groundbreaking because it linked ancient myths with the idea of alien visitors. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki were not just gods, but technology-advanced beings from a planet beyond Neptune, and their return to Earth was tied to an eventual cataclysmic event, the return of Nibiru. This idea of return to Earth has captured the imaginations of millions of people.
But, of course, Sitchin's theories have been highly controversial. Many scholars have criticized his interpretations of the ancient text, arguing that his translations were flawed or that he misinterpreted the Sumerian language. Despite this, his work has been embraced by a wide range of alternate thinkers and conspiracy theorists, including those who believe in government cover-ups of extraterrestrial life.
In fact, the Anunnaki have become central to a broader conspiracy narrative that involves government cover-ups, secret societies, and the withholding of alien technology from the general public. According to these theories, world governments, particularly the U.S., are in a secret contact with extraterrestrial civilizations, including the Anunnaki, and are hiding the truth about our origins and the advanced technologies that were given to humanity by these things.
Now, this leads to one of the most popular modern conspiracy theories surrounding the Anunnaki. The idea that they are secretly in control of world events and at a global elite, often referred to as the Illuminati, are their earthly representatives. According to these conspiracy theorists, the Anunnaki are using human society as a means to achieve their own goals, often with an emphasis on the manipulation of world economics, technological control, or even genetic experimentation.
There's also the idea that the Anunnaki could be part of the Great Reset or other large-scale socio-political conspiracies. Some claim that the current push for global centralization, whether it's in politics, finance, or health, is somehow tied to the return of the Anunnaki and their desire to reassert control over humanity. These theories combine the ancient myth of the gods return with the ancient gods return with modern fears about the erosion of national sovereignty and individual freedom.
Then there's the whole Nibiru cataclysm theory. This one is tied to the belief that the Anunnaki's home planet Nibiru is on a collision course with Earth and that their return will coincide with a massive cataclysm. The theory became especially popular in the early 2000s, with people speculating that Nibiru would pass by Earth in 2012, causing a massive planetary shift or an apocalyptic event. When 2012 came and went without incident, the idea of a cataclysmic return of the Anunnaki continues to be part of an apocalyptic and conspiracy thinking.
What's fascinating about these conspiracy theories is how they've morphed and merged over time. The New World Order conspiracies, the Illuminati, extraterrestrial cover-ups, and even shadow governments all get tied into the story of the Anunnaki. In this modern view, the Anunnaki are no longer just ancient gods. They are powerful, secretive beings who have a hidden agenda, shaping world events from the shadows and maintaining control over human development.
Now, one of the modern revelations that has become central to the Anunnaki-related conspiracies is the idea of ancient technology hidden by governments or secret societies. These conspiracies often suggest that the pyramids, Stonehenge, Easter Island, and other ancient structures were not created by human hands alone, but were constructed with the help of advanced technology, possibly even alien technology, given to humanity by the Anunnaki.
Right. And there's an entire subset of people who believe that the pyramids were built using technology so advanced that it defies our understanding of ancient construction methods. Some theorists even argue that these ancient structures were built to harness energy or act as a form of communication with extraterrestrials, again, potentially linking them to the Anunnaki.
Now, in line with this, there's also the idea that the ancient texts, including the Bible, are somehow encoded with hidden messages about the Anunnaki. For example, certain passages in the book of Ezekiel describe a heavenly chariot with wheels within wheels, which some believe describe a spacecraft. These interpretations suggest that the biblical God might have been based on the Anunnaki or other extraterrestrial beings, influencing not just Sumerian and Mesopotamian cultures, but also the development of other major world religions.
This all feeds into a broader suspicion of authority and institutional power, with many conspiracy theorists pointing to the denial of extraterrestrial life by governments and mainstream scientists as proof of a cover-up. They argue that the truth about extraterrestrial beings, including the Anunnaki, is being deliberately hidden from the public to maintain control over humanity.
To add another layer, some modern interpretations also tie the Anunnaki to human evolution. There's a theory that the Anunnaki's genetic experiments may have played a role in the development of Homo sapiens. This idea is sometimes referred to as the genetic manipulation theory, and it suggests that the Anunnaki altered early human DNA to create a more intelligent species, one that could serve their needs. This would align with the Sumerian creation myth, where humans were made to work for the gods.
At the end of the day, the modern interpretation of the Anunnaki, whether as extraterrestrial visitors, ancient gods, or genetic manipulators, speaks to a deep sense of mystery and a desire to understand our origins. These theories touch on everything from extraterrestrial life to global politics, and they continue to spark debate and fascination. Whether you buy into the conspiracies or not, there's no denying the cultural impact the Anunnaki have had on our collective imagination.
Absolutely, Ghosty. The Anunnaki have gone from ancient myth to modern legend, shaping everything from conspiracy theorists to the way we think about the origins of humanity. and whether they're real, symbolic, or simply a myth projection of human fears and hopes, they remain an enduring part of our cultural fabric. Now let's step into a more contentious area, the clash between science and the mystery surrounding the Anunnaki. While theories about the Anunnaki's extraterrestrial origins and their influence on human history have captured the imagination of millions, these ideas stand in stark contrast to the controversial views of archaeologists, historians, and scientists. So let's dig into the conflict. How does science approach the Anunnaki, and why do these theories continue to be so compelling despite mainstream skepticism?
It's a fascinating debate, Beaker. On one hand, we have the scientific community, which generally operates under the assumption that human history is a result of evolution, cultural development, and natural phenomena. Mainstream scientists look at the rise of ancient civilizations through the lens of archaeology, anthropology, and genetics, which means they typically reject the idea that extraterrestrials had any hand in shaping humanity's past.
Exactly. Now, mainstream archaeology relies heavily on physical evidence like ancient artifacts, structures, and genetic data to piece together the story of human origins. The rise of civilization, the development of agriculture, the building of monumental structures like the pyramids or Stonehenge, and even the understanding of early writing systems are all attributed to human ingenuity over millennia. There's a general consensus that ancient cultures, though advanced, were not in contact with extraterrestrials or guided by outside forces.
And yet, the Anunnaki theory, specifically the idea that they were extraterrestrial beings who interacted with humans thousands of years ago, has a way of challenging these scientific views. It raises some unsettling questions for mainstream science. For example, the precision and complexity of ancient structures like the Great Pyramids of Giza have led some to argue that there must have been some outside help. How could people in ancient Egypt have built such advanced structures with the tools available at the time?
Right. Now, there's the mystery. Now, that's where the mystery enters. The construction of the pyramids has long been a source of wonder. Even though we have theories on how the Egyptians may have built them using ramps and sheer manpower, no one really knows for sure how they achieved such incredible precision, especially when it comes to aligning the pyramids with stellar constellations and ensuring their mathematical perfection.
That's the mystery that fuels the alternative theories. Some argue that ancient civilizations were simply too primitive to have built such sophisticated structures without external help. The Anunnaki, in this context, are seen as potential extraterrestrials who had advanced knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and technology that far surpassed anything we believe was possible at the time in the view. In this view, the mystery is about reconciling the gap between what ancient people were capable of and the sophistication of the structures they left behind.
One of the key arguments in favor of these alternate theories is the idea that human knowledge and technology seem to have appeared suddenly. It's the classic sudden leap in history. How did Mesopotamian cultures, for example, go from primitive hunter-gatherers to creating cities, developing writing systems like cuneiform, and building temples in the span of just a few thousand years? The idea is that there had to be some outside influence, perhaps from beings like the Anunnaki, to explain such a rapid advancement.
On the other side of the debate, mainstream scientists argue that the development of human civilization is a gradual process that took place over millennia. Archaeologists point to evidence of earlier cultures like the Natufians in the Levant or the Harappans in the Indus Valley, who laid the groundwork for the rise of Sumerian civilization. They argue that the social technological advances were made possible through the accumulation of knowledge over generations. In short, it wasn't the Anunnaki who guided humanity, it was human ingenuity, step by step over thousands of years.
And of course, there's the genetic argument. Mainstream science today generally believes that human evolution occurred through natural process, driven by Darwinian evolution, natural selection, and genetic mutations. The development of Homo sapiens is seen as a result of gradual changes in the human genome, which allowed early humans to develop tools, language, and complex societies. In this view, the idea that the Anunnaki genetically engineered humans to serve them doesn't hold up to scientific scrutiny.
That's true. Genetics, especially with the recent advances in genomics and DNA sequencing, has provided solid evidence of the evolutionary path that led to modern humans. We know, for example, that early humans shared a common ancestor with Neanderthals and Denisovans, and that our species underwent significant changes over time as we adapted to different environments. There's no conclusive evidence genetically that suggests any alien intervention in the creation of Homo sapiens.
And on the topic of aliens, it is important to note that while mainstream scientists have not completely ruled out extraterrestrial life, they remain skeptical of the idea that aliens have ever visited Earth. Astrobiology is a growing field, and scientists have increasingly looked for signs of life elsewhere in the universe, whether it's microbial life forms, life on Mars, or the potential for extraterrestrial civilizations in different distant star systems. But that doesn't mean scientists are ready to accept the idea that the Anunnaki visited Earth in ancient times.
That's right. The scientific community demands empirical evidence, concrete data that can be observed, tested, and repeated. To be clear, there is no physical evidence that supports the idea of extraterrestrial beings visiting ancient Earth, and until something like that comes to light, the Anunnaki theory remains firmly in the realm of speculation and alternative history. But hold on, I have something that I seen on this that kind of raised my eyebrows about this very topic here. Now, that something that shows like evidence out of us humans is the fact that we're the only creature that doesn't have natural sun protection. If you think about it, we don't have the hair all over our bodies that would protect us from the sun. So we need sunblock, which is strange if you think about the creation of everything on Earth. As well as we're also the only ones that have to deal with back pain, because if we were, say, manipulated by creatures from another planet with different bone structure due to the gravity on that planet and mixed with the creatures that were here already, now you have something that's kind of in the mix of the two, where you have the gravity here structure, you have the gravity there structure combined. We have back problems.
Other animals have back problems, and
Not
they don't
like
need
us.
to wear sunscreen, but they do go sit in the shade so they're not in the sun.
But they have natural sun protection. We don't.
Yeah, we have hair on our head.
Only on our head, but our bodies burn.
Animals,
Physical evidence.
Look, animals.
There you go, scientists. There you go, scientists.
Animals can get sunburns too.
If they lose all their hair, yes.
Yes, but they can get sunburns.
Why did we lose all our hair?
Elephants don't have.
Why did we lose all our hair?
Elephants aren't.
Why did we lose all our hair?
Listen, dipshit. Elephants aren't completely covered in hair. They're constantly throwing waters on themselves to keep cool down. They
Cool down, not sunburn.
Right. Animals can get sunburns, and not all mammals are.
Only if they don't have hair.
Not all mammals are completely covered in hair.
But they have enough for sun protection. They don't need sun.
You and your alien theories. Okay, but here's where it gets interesting.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
Okay. The fact that the Anunnaki theory remains popular despite the lack of scientific backing points to something more fundamental: our collective curiosity about our origins. Humanity has always looked to the skies and wondered if we are alone in the universe. The Anunnaki theory taps into this desire for something greater, an extraterrestrial connection that explains the mysteries of our past.
And that's why the Anunnaki story is so compelling. For many, it offers an explanation for the mysteries that science hasn't fully answered, like sunblock, the mystery of the pyramids, the sudden rise of civilization, and even the unexplained ancient technologies. All of these are pieces of the puzzle that the scientific community doesn't have complete answers for yet. The Anunnaki, for some, offer a tantalizing possibility that alien intervention played a key role in shaping our civilization and creating sunblock.
In the end, the tension between science and mystery is what keeps the story alive. Science offers a rational, evidence-based approach to understanding our origins, while the mystery invites us to dream of something larger, of a universe filled with intelligent beings who may have visited our planet, guided our evolution, and shaped the course of history. As science advances, it may one day provide answers that either confirm or dismiss these ancient theories. Until then, the debate continues. And there you have it, folks. A deep dive into the history and mystery of the Anunnaki. We've explored ancient texts, mythologies, modern interpretations, and the tensions between science and the speculative theories surrounding these enigmatic beings. From their Sumerian roots to the place in modern conspiracy theories, the Anunnaki continue to captivate our imaginations and challenge our understanding of human history.
It's wild to think about, isn't it? Whether you're a skeptic or a believer in the more alternative theories, the idea that ancient gods or extraterrestrial beings might have had a hand in shaping humanity's rise to civilization is certainly fascinating. What's really interesting, though, is how these stories tap into our collective curiosity about our origins and the unknowns of the universe. Are we product of an ancient cosmic intervention, or are we simply the result of natural processes unfolding over millennia?
Exactly, Ghosty. And that's what keeps the story so compelling. It's not just about ancient Sumer or the mysterious Anunnaki. It's about us, humanity, and our quest for meaning and understanding. Whether it's through mythology, conspiracy theories, or scientific inquiry, we are all trying to make sense of where we came from and where we're headed. As much as we've learned over the years, the mystery surrounding the Anunnaki and the broader question of extraterrestrial life remains as open as ever.
So, what do you think, listeners? Are the Anunnaki just a fascinating piece of ancient mythology, or is there something more to their story? Could they have influenced humanity's evolution, or is this all just a wild speculative theory? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop us a line on social media or send us an email at evp.pod@gmail.com. Let's keep the conversation going.
And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the EVP podcast for more deep dives into the strange, the mysterious, and the unexpected.
Unexplained.
Unexplained.
That was unexpected.
That was very unexpected. Now, we've got more historical mysteries, alien encounters, and paranormal phenomena lined up for you in future episodes.
A big thanks to everyone for tuning in, whether you're driving to work, working out, or just relaxing. We appreciate you making the EVP podcast a part of your day. Until next time, remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, and the unknown is just waiting to be uncovered.
So stay scared, stay fascinated, and as always, keep your ears open for the unexpected. This has been the EVP podcast.
Signing off. Ghost, you don't play that.
Peace out, butterflies.
This is the EVP Podcast.